Great rise. So, my teenager always has me self conscious about my edges. We didn't think about that in the 80s. But I wanted to come on here to be encouraging today and just share a story about me when I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, my favorite Bible story, for those who are not aware, there's a Bible story about a character called Daniel, well, a person called Daniel, because he was a real person. And this is in the Old Testament. And he was someone who was favored by God, and he had, you know, spiritual gifts, and he was able to take a stand for, something that God told him to do. And he was hated because he took a stand. So anyway, long story short, there were people who set him up to look bad before the king because he served the king. And one of the punishments was they made the king make everyone bow down to him as an act of obedience and service. But they knew that Daniel wouldn't do it because Daniel only worshiped his God, and he didn't worship the gods that they worshiped. And he took a stand, he had conviction. And because of that, the punishment was to be thrown into a den full of lions. So, um, they set him up, basically, his opposers, his haters, his enemies, so that he could be thrown into the lion's den because they knew that he wouldn't back down on his conviction. And he was thrown into the lion's den. The king was really sad because he really liked Daniel. He respected him, he admired him, but he knew that, he had to, as a king, also stand by his edict that he set forth. And so Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, but Daniel had faith. He had faith in his God. And one of the reasons why I bring this story up is when I was a little girl and I was afraid of the dark, I would always think of that story and think of the courage that Daniel had and try to imagine if I was surrounded by a bunch of lions in a dark cave. So, first of all, it gave me comfort because I wasn't surrounded by lions. I was just dark in my bedroom. So, that was my rationale. And then it just helped me to understand that courage requires faith, and it requires believing. And it doesn't require you to shove your faith down anyone else's throat. Daniel set an example just by being himself and just by believing and having faith. And the story goes that there were angels that God sent that kept the lions' mouths shut and kept them from even bothering Daniel. But can you imagine the fear that he had? Even though he had courage and faith, he still had lions brushing past him in the darkness. But in the morning, when they rolled that stone back and the king called out, "Did your God save you?" And Daniel answered, "Yes, he did." So let that be of encouragement for you today. If you're facing something that requires courage, trust and surrender to God's, even if it looks dire. Just trust. God has got your back. He's still a God of miracles. And if you truly believe that, you don't have to shove it down anyone's throat. You can just keep believing it.